we're very excited to have J.J. Carrell. His film right now, it's called What is Treason? It's available online. On November 19th, it was just this last November, he testified on the House Committee on the Homeland Security, where he was basically calling out the Catholic Charities, the Lutheran Family Services, and specifically the Jewish Family Services on their trafficking of children and the border problem we have of a massive level. There's a massive amount of children missing, and he went in there to call it out. Let's take a look at that first, and then we'll bring him in. Here we go.
To ask Mr. Carrell and anybody else who would like to answer this, can you name some of these NGOs that have specifically taken these hundreds of millions of dollars and not used it to protect these children?
Catholic Charities, Lutheran Family Services, Jewish Family Services. I spoke to a gentleman that works in DHS. He actually sends the electronic fund transfers, and I asked him, sir, tell me who do you send, who are you responsible for, and how much is the largest check you cut? He said, I'm over Jewish Family Services, and I cut a check for $600 million. And I said, is that for like 3 years? And he told me, JJ, get in the game. That's 2 or 3 months, and it's renewable. That's one NGO. And I said, well, Catholic Charities is bigger than Jewish Family Services. Yes, they get the same or more. You're talking about billions upon billions of dollars given to NGOs to further the trafficking of everyone crossing the border, to include children.
Please welcome back to the show, J.J. Carrell. Oh, here we go. Boom. Hey, JJ.
Hey, Matt. Thank you very much for having me back. I appreciate the chance to talk about this topic. And that day was, I'll stick in my mind forever because it reinforced every belief that I had. That is that we are run by the dumbest people in our population, and they can't be trusted to do anything. I testified that children were being raped as I spoke, and their response was, well, it looks like we're out of time. And then instead of pulling me to the side and saying, hey, you said children are being raped right now, let's go talk. No, they didn't ask me that. They asked me a very grotesque question. Do you want a picture with us? No, I don't want a picture with you, gutless. It's unbelievable. The people that run our country truly, truly are the dumbest people in our population.
So you were starting on the documentary, What is Treason, and you started on that like a year ago. Did you know you were going to be going down this rabbit hole on because that I mean, tell the audience about the film, because I think that's where you're focusing on the border. But then when did the child trafficking come up for you, and when did you get really concerned about that issue in that process?
This is a great topic because I never in a million years thought I was going to do a documentary on child sex trafficking. I went into this in April of 2024 with a business partner, Ryan Matta, who's the director of this film. And he and I had it all laid out. I knew exactly what we're going to talk about. I knew we were going to talk about child trafficking. I knew that was going to be a part of the movie, but I figured it would just be part of it. Halfway through, or somewhere about a quarter to halfway through the filming, he and I looked at each other as we're driving through Texas, and we're like, everything revolves around child pedophilia and child sex trafficking. Everything does. Like, everything is leading to that. What is going on? And got to the point that he and I filmed so much of footage that he and I said, look, if God gives us enough sales on what is traffic invaded, we'll come back later, right now, as I'm speaking, and film a secondary documentary on child sex trafficking. Lo and behold, when we got all of our hundreds of hours of footage and we started going through it, we realized we already had the movie. We already were able to prove our belief that the United States federal government is the world's largest child sex trafficking organization in modern history, and we had interviewed enough people to validate exactly what our beliefs were. And everyone we interviewed, people with CIA background, all the alphabet agencies, people that worked inside the child detention facilities, people that trafficked the children, meaning escorted them through government pay services all across America, to people that go and hunt down these child sex trafficking organizations and people that go rescue. I interviewed everyone, and everyone told me the United States government is trafficking children. And every piece of evidence, every research I did, every filming I did brought me to this disgusting topic of child sex trafficking. And then it consumed my life. And then my partner and I said, well, we can't, what are we going to do? We have 2 documentaries. Which one we put out first? And we said, you can't put out Invaded before you do Trafficked. I mean, I can't tell people, hey, we got this thing called child sex trafficking, but we'll tell you about this in a couple months. No, we had to focus everything on this first documentary. And then people started calling me. I got asked to go and testify in front of Congress, which was a complete and utter waste of my time. I will never, ever do that again, because that is a cesspool of stupidity and corruption like you can't even fathom.
Well,
To the point.
we're
Sorry.
glad that you did go in there, JJ, because you're setting a high precedent for the rest of us that we need to call these people out, even though it sounds like it was a horrible experience to go in there, but we have the footage and we can show it. We can say, hey, you went into the lion's den, you confronted them, and this is how they treated you. It's kind of eye-opening, and it kind of exposes it right there, just their reaction to you. So we're glad that you did that. Yeah, I agree. You probably don't want to do it again, but I'm glad we have it on record that you did it.
Well, I appreciate that. People tell me it wasn't a waste of time because of what you just said, but for me, I went because Donald Trump was already elected. I figured, okay, I'll have a chance. The chairman was a former sheriff, but I will tell you that. Let me give you a little side note of just so I drive home the point of how corrupt our government is. So when you go in to do testify in front of Congress, there's no back and forth. They control the speaker box, if you will. I can hit the button all I want, but they control it. So when they get a chance to talk about you, you can't say anything about it. And the interesting thing, Matt, is I quickly realized, oh, it's just the witnesses have to swear to tell the truth. None of the Congress people swore an oath during our meeting that they had to tell the truth. So we came to a congresswoman named Delia Ramirez, a female congresswoman from Chicago area in Illinois. She proceeds to call me every racist name under the book. I'm a white supremacist. I'm a xenophobe. I'm a white nationalist, blah, blah, blah. She puts up a picture and claims it's from my Twitter account. It's not. And then she gets very emotional. And this is why the reason I'm telling you that the federal government is the enemy. We've allowed the enemy into our government. She gets very emotional talking about women and children being raped on the border. And I'm watching her after she castigates me, I'm watching her go through this change as she starts to get emotional. When people get emotional, because I did this for a living, I interview people for interrogations all the time. I'm watching her body language change. I'm watching everything change. And I'm like, oh, where's she going to go with this? She's all emotional now. And then she makes this statement. I could not believe it. And I write it in my book. I write it detail, word for word detail, what she says. And she says, I don't ever want to talk about this subject ever again about women being raped on the border because my mother, when she crossed the border illegally, was raped, crossing the border pregnant with me. And I remember sitting there going, does anybody here want to point out the fact that there's an illegal alien sitting in the House of Congress as a congresswoman? And she's telling me, a Border Patrol agent of 24 years, of that I don't have the experience to do this job, but we have a sitting congresswoman that's an illegal alien. Do you know that I did research for my book? She never naturalized. She's married to an illegal alien, and multiple family members are illegal aliens. So where does her loyalty lie? It's an honest question that everyone needs to ask. Same thing with Ilhan Omar. We know where her loyalty lies, Somalia. She said it out loud. We have the enemy of our government inside of our government. They're sitting in positions of authority and power. It was unbelievable. Literally, I'm looking at the left thinking you are disgusting, but I'm looking at, quote, my side, the Republican side, and they are nothing but a gutless bunch of old white men. Honestly, let's just be honest. The only person that came in a little later that had a set of balls was Marjorie Taylor Greene. That's it. Everyone else was just gutless. The only person that has any courage is Marjorie Taylor Greene. I can't believe it, dude. I'm telling you that our government has been taken over. What we're seeing in Doge, what we're seeing is the Epstein debacle today, the way that Pam Bondi and DOG's handling that is atrocious what they're doing.
Well, yeah. I mean, it is, and I appreciate you brought up the part about you're sitting in that room and you realize that everybody is working against you and your mission to get the truth out, and they're protecting something else. And I think that we have to have that conversation a little larger and a little louder, because it's easy to get caught on the side. Because when we see how horrible the Democrats have been, we've seen this disgusting 4 years of Biden, it's easy for us to say, well, it's only half of them doing it. No, they're all doing it. There's something fundamentally wrong with the entire system. And I think what we have to start coming together as a true populist movement and holding them all accountable, not just Biden's, shitty system that he had in place for 4 years, but the entire system needs to come apart and start over. But you're right to point this out. And the one person that stands up, there's Marjorie Taylor Greene. That's good to know. But as far as what are they protecting? What is the thing they're protecting? I'm interested in that. Like, you talked about the Jewish Family Services. You talked about this NGO situation where they're somehow funneling this money, massive amount of money. Do you have an idea about how much money this is? And do you have any sort of paper trail that you've been able to discover in your investigations, where this money is coming from, how they're able to hide this? And is Doge looking into this exact area, or are they too busy with all their other ones they're into right now?
No. Okay. Before we go into NGOs, you asked a very important question. What are they hiding? I want you to think about this. I testify that thousands of children are being raped right now. I'm not talking about monetary policy or should we frack or not, right? It should be like all hands on deck. Wait, hold on a second. What's your proof? Okay, here's my proof. This is what's happened. You've lost all the children. Okay, we need a task force right now. Let's go find the kids. Nope. In fact, this was probably sixth or seventh of these committees talking about child sex trafficking, and nothing's been done. They don't care. Why? Because I interviewed all the people and they all said to me, all of them, do you understand, JJ, that congressmen, senators, and presidents with an S are pedophiles? That the upper echelon of our society is riddled with pedophilia? That's what they're hiding. Now, how do they go about it with the NGOs? This is I wrote about this in my book, Treason. My book came out a week ago. It's been on the bestseller on Amazon. I finished writing it in the second week of January. So everything that I wrote is relevant, and everything Donald Trump is exposing through Doge and through his executive orders is proving everything that I wrote validate as the truth. And let me tell you, I already knew this, and I wrote about it in Invaded, and I'm writing it again in Treason. You ask about the NGOs. The NGOs are the engine driving the machine. The federal government cannot move 30 million people up to the border and then 30 million people delivered into America. That's how many people crossed in 4 years under Joe Biden, 30 million. They've admitted to 18 million. I'm telling you, through all of my experience and all my contacts, the number's about 30 million, and we're being conservative. How do we know? So you ask, how do we know how much money? Let me give you an example. Just give you an example. In my testimony, I talked to the guy that sent all the electronic fund transfers, the EFTs, $600 million to Jewish Family Services. That's a drop in the bucket, Matt. Catholic Charities, the last number that came out, and I believe it's grossly conservative, has shown in the last 4 years under Joe Biden, the Catholic Charities received over $3.2 billion. $3.2 billion. Now, when you go to USAID through Doge, USAID, they uncovered that their budget is about $50 billion, and they were funding the UN, the IOM, and they were directly funding NGOs, international NGOs, to bring 30 million people up to the border. Then our government funded DHS, who then laundered the money through FEMA, and FEMA gave domestic NGOs tens of billions of dollars to bring the illegal aliens from the border to the interior. And let me finish with this. Joe Biden's own administration openly admitted the bottom number of costs to move and house and educate and everything else on illegal aliens was $700 billion to over $1 trillion in 4 years. And everyone knows the true number is surpassed $1 trillion for illegal aliens. Our government stole our money, put it in USAID, redirected it down to international organizations, NGOs that are run by Soros, etc. to fundamentally transform America through a demographic shift. That is not, you cannot argue it. It is in fact, it is written in black and white. It is going through Doge. It's going through people like me. That is what your government did.
That's unbelievable, JJ. So from hearing all this and assuming this all checks out on the page, where I go to, and I always like to go to like historical context, like back up before that. And my question right now is, and I'm thinking about this, Trump was in the previous 4 years.
Correct.
This whole scam, or this whole underground, money funneling for all this trafficking, all of this everything you just described could not possibly have just started when Biden took the oath of office. This seems to have been embedded in our system well before that. How do we explain that? And are you concerned about that part? And I think this comes back to the Jeffrey Epstein list, is you can't, unless the crimes are just for the last 4 years. I mean, that would be easy just to show, hey, here's all the crimes. But if they date back earlier, if there's other people, like you said, walking into that Congress, and the Republicans and Democrats alike are protecting something larger. So back to the thing they're protecting. This thing they're protecting was around way before Biden took the oath of office. So what I'm suggesting is, how can we go further back? How is Doge going to be honest enough to go further back? Because Doge did not exist in 2016, 17, 18, 19. So what do we do about, going down that path and trying to find, justice for where did this even begin? I guess.
No, that's a great question, but let's understand Doge actually existed before. It was the United States Digital Service that Obama created. He created it, and then they changed the name under Doge. But you're absolutely right. This has been going on for decades. I would say, I would go for immigration fraud alone back to 1965. That's when we started. We changed all the demographics. People need to understand, from 1924 to 1965, we basically had a zero-based immigration system. Like, it was quotas, man. And it was tightly regulated. 1965 changed everything all the way up to present day. We have been living through a lie. Now, let's look at, when you look at Jewish Family Service, Lutheran Family Services, and I'm Catholic, so I'm going to focus on what my church has done. The Catholic Church. The Catholic Church has received over $5.2 billion from 2009 to now. Our government has been funding the NGOs, and they call it refugees. Everything is refugees, right? Refugees encompasses everything. And basically, when you hear refugee services, I want you to think illegal alien. That's all that is. They can call it whatever the hell they want to call it, but it's illegal aliens. Our government, our federal government, for decades has been funding religious NGOs to the detriment of America for decades. Now, with that being said, when you have a closed border like Donald Trump had at the end of his first term, the border was sealed. It was going to be completely sealed within 6 or 9 months. The NGOs could not do anything. They couldn't bring people up because there was no one allowed in. Now you go to what Biden did. Biden intentionally opened the borders on day one. So your audience has an understanding of what context, what I'm saying. Day one to the very last day, not like a month before. I'm talking the last day he left office. The United States Border Patrol arrested between 5,000 and 20,000 a day and released 95 to 97% of everyone they arrested. It has never been done if you just go off a CBP data, don't go off of my 30 million. Let's just trust what they said, the government. And I'm assuming your audience doesn't trust the government, but let's just trust the government for this. They've openly admitted they have allowed in 4.5 million illegal aliens every single year for 4 years. Our government did that. Our government. So when you go all the way back and you ask, how's this been going? And you are absolutely right. This is not just a Democrat problem. This is a uniparty issue. Both parties have done this to us. I served under 5 presidential administrations. 5. 3 Democrats, 2 Republicans. Donald Trump only was able to help the border secure the final 2 years. Why? Because he was fighting the Republican Party the whole time for the first 2 years. Mitch McConnell and Paul Ryan. Both parties are complicit in the destruction of our sovereignty of America.
Yeah, no, I'm happy to hear you say that. This is something that can rally everybody together and be on the same team about this and hold the people in power that are exploiting their power and doing all this horrible stuff. And you see all the people suffering. I think that we have to also put some empathy in here. And I obviously we have it for the children. I want to talk to you about the children a little more in a brief in a bit here. But just overall, when we look at the situation with flooding people through the border, we have to understand that they are also being used and manipulated, and they
Mhm.
are victims, even if they're not particularly disappearing and being the children that are disappearing and the women that are disappearing. That's the worst case scenario. But if they do make it here and they're under some weird conditions here where they're, we're upset. We understand that we have to do something about this, but shouldn't we focus more on the people exploiting them and figure out how this is even happening? Is the cartel the main culprit? I think that it is, and I think that the funding of getting people through here is happening because of our money, like you said earlier, going through the cartel and kind of using these people as I guess I look at it as they are the victims, and we have to stop punching down at them and start looking at, like you were saying, getting more serious at the border and not letting these people get exploited. And worst case scenario, the children and the women that are getting completely, they're having the worst situation of all. And that's it's unthinkable what's happened to them. But shouldn't we have a little more empathy to the people that that it wasn't really their choice to be used and exploited like this?
Well, they did make a choice, didn't they? They came up to the border, right? Knowing it was illegal, but they were lied to. I will submit that to you. They were lied to. And I believe we can do two things at once. I don't think it's exclusive. We can walk and chew gum, meaning
Mhm.
we just shut the border down. Trump shut the border down in one day. I want your audience to understand. Didn't take 5 years. One day, he took the military and the border patrol, and 97% of the flow of illegal aliens stopped. Now, everybody that's arrested, I think on Saturday was 200 people. 200 people were all deported, everyone. So now we have 50 million illegal aliens in the country, and I can break that down for you how I got the number, but it's a true factual number and it's probably conservative. 50 million. America cannot sustain her greatness and who we are if we have 50 million illegal aliens in a country where the birth rate is not even at the replacement, and the people that we brought in will reproduce at a 2 to 6 times the rate of American nationals. I didn't vote for 50 million illegal aliens to come in. I don't know anybody that did. So why did my vote through my representative, allow 50 million people into my country? I don't want them in my country. I want them all out. Now, when you talk about people that are abused, yes, I want to use the frame of the disgusting left and the rhinos like Mitch McConnell and Lindsey Graham. I want a comprehensive approach, meaning I want everything taken care of. I want the border shut down. I want everyone out of my country that's illegally, because I'm going to warn you, Matt, against this, because I'm going to tell you a story, a quick 1-minute story to tell you how I came to this feeling that I want everyone out. You can't, if I lined up 100 illegal aliens, even if I ended up all males, all single adult military age men, I lined them up, you would never be able to pick out the terrorists, the drug dealers, the murderers, and the rapists. You couldn't. Maybe you pick out a few guys with tats on their face, but everyone else, you have no idea. Let me give you a quick story. This is what changed my career. At about 2 a.m, about year 1 or year 2 of my job, I arrested some guy in the middle of the woods at 2 o'clock in the morning. No one was around, just me and him. And he and I start talking. I said, okay, he submitted to everything I said. He did everything I wanted him to do. So in my brain, I said, I'm not going to cuff him up. He was about 5'5", about 115 pounds soaking wet. He looked like he was like an accountant. So I said, okay, walk with me. I got him into the station. I run his fingerprints, and he's a mass murderer. I never did that ever again, because I told myself, you cannot tell who is killing people, raping people, who's a pedophile, who's a drug dealer. All of that stuff about tats all over your body, that doesn't matter. You never know. So my point is, right now, up to 40 Americans are murdered or killed in vehicular homicide and drunk driving every single day. 40. I'm not talking about the people that are assaulted. I'm not talking about the people that are stolen from. I'm not talking about all the children being raped. I'm not talking about the thousands of rapes that are going on in America. I'm just talking about Americans every day. 40. I don't
Okay.
want anybody here that's not legal. I want them gone, because here's the bigger moral issue we have, Matt. We allow in 1.2 million legal residents every single year. What a detriment and what a slap in the face to them that they will never ever achieve the American dream of financial security. Why? Because we bring in 4 to 5 million illegal aliens every year to so they can undercut their wage and make them work 2 or 3 jobs instead of that person working one job and growing into the American economy. We owe it to those people. Everything we're doing is morally bankrupt. Everything.
So, JJ, I want to kind of back up with you on we're talking about the problem, and you're talking about you want them out. We want them out. Okay.
Mhm.
I think what we need to do, because I think we're missing a step here, we got to go back to why they're coming in. Because you pointed that out earlier. You said, well, they're the ones that wanted to come in here.
Mhm.
So what I look at, again, this is about, take a step back and look at the why. Why are they wanting? We have to look at our guilt, not just as funding this stuff. We are going into other countries with our military. We are going in and doing coups all over the world. We have 800 military bases all over the globe. Primarily, when we look at Latin America specifically, we have 100 bases in Latin America. So we can go through the data, all the different coups we started, all the different, how we put our heavy foot down on them with tariffs and all sorts of ways to destroy economies. And we've been doing that for decades. So we actually create this problem, create unlivable areas where people become refugees and they have to make their way up here, and eventually they end up here. And
I agree.
so that's something that if we're going to walk into the lion's den like you did, like you talked about your experience going in there, we might as well hit them with everything and really focus on why is our American military designed this way? Why is our foreign policy designed this way? If we fixed our foreign policy problem, we would not be creating this problem, creating the people coming in here. We would be better off with all of our relationships. And we talk about this on the show all the time. This should be the thing that we put out first. Don't you think that would be a way to really get people like rounded up and angry at the right thing, rather than, again, saying, why do you want to come here? We're creating the situation for them to come here.
We created the situation for them to come here by inviting them to come in, by blowing up all kinds of having wars in the Middle East and destroying economies in the South. I absolutely agree with 100%. I also will go one step further in agreement with you. Why are there millions of people coming across the border? Why are children coming across by themselves? And why are all the hard narcotics coming through? Because if we really looked in the mirror, if we really wanted to place blame, you don't blame somebody that provides you the product. Even though I hate the cartels, they're demons. I fought against them for 24 years, and I have no problem if I was assigned to go kill them. I have no problem with that. However, if we're going to be intellectually honest, who is desiring the products they deliver? Who is the number one consumer of child pornography in the world? Who is the number one consumer of hard narcotics in the world? Who actually pays the most money to rape children in all of the world? That would be the United States of America. Americans are demanding cheap labor. Americans are demanding hard narcotics, and Americans are demanding young little children so they can rape them. That is what's happening in America until we do this, quote, comprehensive understanding and awakening and realize that America, we've bombed nations into smithereens. We have military bases skewed across the globe, and then we are so insatiable for our evil appetites. Until that gets done, let me ask you just a simple question. What if Americans didn't want to rape children? What if Americans didn't snort cocaine and shoot up heroin and take fentanyl? What if Americans were okay with no cheap labor and paying for fair wages? Do you think the cartels would be pushing stuff over to us that we don't want? Does Amazon sell you things you don't want? Or does Amazon sell you things you desire? Same thing with cartels.
So I'm gonna take that question and move it to the next place. If we didn't want to do that, JJ, and they had a way they could change that, don't you think they would change that because that benefits them? In other words, I'm not saying we don't take personal responsibility for our actions. I am saying we understand the CIA and their ability with their secret programs to control the masses. We understand, there are, Operation Mockingbird. There's all sorts of operations. You can talk to, hear Ice Cube talk about what they did
Yeah.
to the areas of Southern California, the Compton, and everywhere he came from, and the music industry. We know how you can manipulate people. You know that
Uh-huh.
you can take crack cocaine and insert it into the ghettos, and you can get people hooked on it. There's methodology. So that question you asked me, JJ, is, yeah, if we didn't do those things, they would look for ways to make us do those
Mhm.
things. So what do we do about that part? Again, I say take personal responsibility, but understand there's a larger mechanism at play here that goes beyond our ability to even comprehend as individual people of this country.
Well, that is the $1,000,000 question. What do we do? And the thing that we do, we have to take our country back. We have to have all of it back. We can't have the CIA doing what they do. And you're absolutely right. You have Mockingbird, you have Operation Paperclip, where they brought in
Yep.
all the Nazi scientists into America that started MK Ultra and sex magic. I interviewed a woman that was part of that program, and the stories she told me are horrific. And our federal government admitted it in open Congress in the Church Commission in 1975, where they admitted they brutalized, destroyed thousands of Americans' lives through experiments, sexual and drug experiments, to include thousands of children, and no one was arrested. Why? When you look at how deep our government is, so corrupt and so evil, where did it start? Like, when did this? Our founding fathers did not create this country. So where did we fall off and where did that schism happen to where we became evil? Where? I would believe it's closer to the 1900s, right around that time.
Mm.
But we became evil, and we must admit it. You ask, what do? We have to
Yep.
hold people accountable. Look at the fiasco on the Jeffrey Epstein. How about you freaking government people, Republicans, you're in charge now. Why don't you just release it all? Why don't you just release all the pedophiles that were raping children on Epstein's Island, and let's start the arrest right now? Because
They're
they're gutless and they're afraid. We all know it.
Yeah. And what we know about Epstein is that it's larger than Epstein was just a unique type of pervert. That this is what they like to do. They like to tell us that these unique type. We have this in Hollywood too. Harvey Weinstein was just a unique type of pervert. He had to go
Yeah.
to jail. Now everything's business as usual. This is how they condition us. That there's
Yep.
this bad apple syndrome, that we just get rid of the bad apple and then it's business as usual. No, the reason they're not getting us the list, and we're covering this later in the show. Everybody thinks, oh, it's coming, everyone's going down. No, they're not mishandling it. They're not dropping the ball. They're not being sloppy or lazy. They are protecting something. And we think, from what the work we've done, I don't know what you think about this, but Epstein absolutely seems to have connected to the Mossad. And that's the kind of thing that once you go down that path, you understand that Trump's cabinet, as much as they're willing to call out certain things about the deep state, there are certain things they don't want to call out, like any connection to the Mossad. I think that might interrupt some of the policy Trump has in place right now, as far as his Israel first agenda and America second, which is another issue. I don't know if you want to comment on that part, but that's the stuff we've been looking at from our end.
One thing that I do believe, that you asked, what do we do? And it was the very first feeling when I came into, I've been to Washington several times. When I went back in November to testify, two things struck me when I drove into Washington. One, how beautiful it is with all the buildings. And number two, it's too powerful. It's too big. The government needs to be as small as it physically possibly can be in order to function. And you ask, what do we do? Smallest government we can, and then you take every agency and department that's left in Washington, D.C., after you take away what we don't need, and you scatter them across the nation. You decentralize all the power, because that's what's happened. We have a power structure in Washington, D.C., and they're so grotesque, they gorge themselves constantly with power and wealth, power and wealth.
Yeah.
We need an overhaul of our system completely, and we need a cleansing, a complete cleansing, but it is deep and it's going to be painful, and it's not going to happen overnight.
Yeah, no, 100%. It's a, I always think of the movie 300, like we're Gerard Butler with our 300, and we're going,
Hmm?
you know, like Spartan, as you're taking on this, there's no way to win, but you go down fighting. And I think that's what we have to do. But we have to, we have to stop protecting people. And if people that we believe in, that we champion, we have to be able to hold them accountable when they don't do the thing they're going to do. And as a former Bernie supporter, I can tell you, and anybody that, that in the space that wasn't there when we were there, we were on the ground with Bernie. We thought we were taking on the system. There's a process you have to go through of grief. The first process is the denial, right? That you're saying, oh, Bernie tried hard and he failed. Oh, they're just too strong. He'll try again.
He's sold out.
Have to realize that he purposely failed.
Yep.
And so we're able to apply that and see that red flag when it comes up again and again. And we try to warn other people that might be guilty of hero worship. We don't ever want to be hero worshipers again. We saw how it ended. It ended poorly for us. We were like Bernie worshiping hero. That didn't work.
Right.
But when you see people like Pam Bondi, and she's not getting the job done, we want to make excuses and go, oh, it's like, well, wait a minute. Maybe it deliberately won't be getting done. And if it does get done, there'll be something nefarious about it. So we always have to look at that and be careful of that, falling into that trap. Because like you said, like, this is a large machine. Like, how are we even going to beat this thing? The first thing we have to do is stop hero worshiping and just align with people we all should be on the same side and against anybody in power, or at least being skeptical of them.
Should always be skeptical. You should never trust anyone. I have a 13-year-old son, and I have this discussion every day. And I tell him, I don't want you trusting anyone, son. No one. In fact, I want you to fact check me all the time. When I tell you something, I want you to go look it up and see if I'm telling you the correct thing. For two reasons. I want him to be a critical thinker. And then two, I want him to understand that his father's telling him the truth so he can trust me. But I trust no one. After 24 years in the Border Patrol, living through that beast, and then seeing in my own eyes, creating and filming 2 documentaries and doing the research for 2 books, there is no one I trust. I trust no organization. In fact, my question to a lot of people is, tell me who you trust. What organization within your life, religion, education, healthcare, politics, law enforcement, the social media, you trust anybody? Do you trust anyone 100%? Do you trust anyone 50%? And no one that I've met yet said, yeah, I do. I trust these. Oh, really? Then you are gullible as hell if you do. And I haven't had anybody tell me. I'm a devout Christian and Catholic. I am a sinner more than most, but I don't trust my faith leaders. Are you kidding me? Do you think I trust my Pope and the bishops? No, absolutely not. The number one in the list, I know my time's getting short, but I want to go back to the NGOs just for a second so your audience understands. Catholic Charities received $5.2 billion from 2009 to 2024 to 25. What else did the Catholic Church, what was their expenditure of $5 billion during the same time frame? Does anybody know? It's to pay off all the child abuse victims. So they matched the money of bringing in illegal aliens to the exact number of dollars needed to pay off the child sex trafficking people. Unbelievable. And do you know who the first group of people to sue the federal government when the federal government under Trump stopped payment to NGOs? Do you know the first group? The very first group to sue was the Conference of U.S. Bishops. U.S. Catholic bishops sued the federal government for more money to engorge themselves in order to move more children and people into America. Unbelievable. Unbelievable.
JJ, we've talked about the money. We've talked about all the scandal behind the scenes, everything that they're protecting. They're not even giving you a time of day when you go in there. The thing that we haven't looked at, and I'm hesitant to ask this question because this is the part. This is the emotional heartstrings part that's hard for us when we talk about the children and we talk about the women. Do you have any way to grasp or to find to be able to tell us how many children and what happened to them and where are they?
They're gone. There's 550,000 unaccompanied alien children crossed under Joe Biden term in office. Those are called UACs. UACs range from literally infants to 17 years old. In August of 2024, Inspector General of DHS came out and said that at that time they had arrested 450,000 children. They had lost 320,000. 320,000 out of the 450,000 are gone. We are just 6 months, 9 months away from the DHS coming out and saying we've lost them all. We have no idea where they are. And I will quote President Trump as he has said, quote, a lot of them are already dead. And he's right. A lot of them are already dead. They're ghosts. They don't exist. Let me tell you how bad this was. I have a colleague, someone that I interviewed in my documentary called Aaron Stevenson. He was a military analyst embedded with USCIS as an employee. He discovered a transnational organization across the globe that were independent of each other. So you had Romanian transnationals, Mexican, Ecuadorian, Russian. They didn't know anything about each other, but they all discovered loopholes in the sponsorship program where they could traffic children into America, and then the U.S. government would transport those children back to the cartels in America. I interviewed all these people, and I'm telling you that all these children are gone. Little Johnny from Ecuador is not going to school, guys. We're not going to find, hey, you're 500 kids here in this elementary school. I would like to talk to them and then check mark them off. They're not in schools. They're like strippers. You know how strippers, they float around, they get on like a circuit so they don't get stale, right? They go all over the nation. Same thing with kids. They're just moving the kids around. The ones that are alive, the ones that haven't been organ harvested. And we're not even talking about our kids. We're not talking about the U.S. citizen kids. 400 to 800,000 U.S. citizens kids go missing every year. Let's say it's 400,000. Let's just play the low end. And let's say that 90% of the 400,000 are just runaways and we find them. You still have lost 40,000 kids. You have no idea where they are. And America doesn't say a damn thing about it. We are in a moral rot. You have brought in 550,000 children. We knew they were being sex trafficked the year one. Year one, we went from 20,000 in 2020 to over 120,000 in 2021, and accelerated all the way to the end of Joe Biden's term. They knew the whole thing was happening, and they did nothing. Do you know what happened to Aaron Stevenson when he blew the whistle on that? He got fired.
So speaking of whistleblowers getting punished, have you been worried about that at all? That there'd be somebody, because you were talking about your books,
Yes.
the documentaries. We know here in Hollywood that there are other people that have tried this. They've tried making documentaries, and all of a sudden they become suicidal, and that's it. I mean, we followed some of these. I mean, like Anne Heche and some of these other, there's a whole list of them that they happen to be working on a documentary about child sex trafficking. What are the odds? And then they became suicidal.
Yeah.
So how do you, I mean, I'm sure you're aware of those situations. I just mentioned one of them. There's a bunch of them that are just we just can't, it was like, how is this even possible? Are you afraid of what might be happening if you continue in the direction you're going?
No, because if I stop, then I'm a coward. It's like my business partner, Ryan Matta, went on and did 2 more documentaries, and he traced the genesis of the child sex trafficking down to Guatemala. And he found that our government has become involved in their elections to try to get rid of the attorney general. This is all open source. And why? Because the Guatemalan government went in and raided 6 NGOs. And the biggest NGO in Guatemala is called Save the Children. And do you know who was the chairman of the board of Save the Children? Her name is Jill Biden. Jill Biden. And 10 days later, after they raided that, do you know who was sent down to Guatemala on an unexpected visit? His name was the Secretary of State, Blinken. And what did he ask to have done? He said, the Attorney General is corrupt. I need you to fire her. Where else did we hear that? That was Ukraine.
Ukraine. Yeah.
So they did the same thing.
Yeah.
They're covering it. The pedophilia goes all the way down. You have no idea. But to answer your question, no, I'm not afraid. I'm not afraid. Was I concerned that Kamala Harris would win and then I would have my door kicked in at 6 a.m? Yes, absolutely. I carry off duty all the time. I'm very aware of my surroundings. And if anybody wants to ever do that to me, I always warn, you may get something off on me, but I'm going to kill you or I'm going to hurt you real bad for the rest of your life. You'll wake up and you'll remember me every day for the rest of your life. And if you hurt my son or my wife, I will sell everything I have and I will become singularly focused on finding you and killing you. So that's my warning whenever someone ever asks me that. But man, I appreciate you talking. I could talk to you all day about this because it is It is so corrupted and so embedded into our society, into our government. Pedophilia is the last taboo. It is the last taboo to fall, and it is the taboo that can coerce and blackmail individuals to do anything in the world. And our government is using that. Look at Epstein, look at P. Diddy. And if you think Epstein and P. Diddy are the only honey traps going on, look, you'd be crazy. This is happening across our communities. Pedophilia runs through our churches, through our faith, through business, entertainment, and politics. Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, we'll see what happens with those Epstein files. But in the meantime, keep doing what you're doing, JJ. I'm going to throw your website up here. People can check out your films and your book. Can we get everything on thisistreason.com, or is there
that's where you go get the DVDs and movies. I have 2 documentaries, to get 2 of them for $9.99. But you can go, and my new book Treason is out on Amazon. Just type in treason
there it
and
is.
put
I got it right there.
just type in treason and JJ, and it pops right up. So, man, I really appreciate this. I would have me on anytime. I'd love to talk to you about this topic, because this is going to get worse and worse before it gets better. There's too many people involved, and I call it the Great Awakening of America. It's happening right now. So thank you.
Absolutely, JJ. Take care.
Have a great day. Thank you. Bye-bye.